Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Black Magic chocolate chip cookies. That's right, we're using activated charcoal to give our award-winning chocolate chips a dark and demonic twist. And besides looking evil, some say it possesses magical healing powers, since it is given to people to absorb toxins. So besides the great taste and look, you may want to make these in case you think someone might be trying to poison you. And to get started, let's check out the star of the show, some activated charcoal powder, which can be made from different things, but most, like this one, are made from coconut. And it might not look like it, but this stuff is completely flavorless. So if you were concerned about that, don't be. This does not taste like burning. But before we get to the black magic portion of the program, we got a couple things to do. The first of which would be to add a touch of white sugar to a couple sticks of unsalted butter. And then we will also want to add some light brown sugar. And no, it did not want to come out of that bowl. It was almost as if there was a spell cast on it. But eventually the spell was broken, at which point I grabbed my electric mixer and proceeded to cream the sugar and butter together, which started out kind of slow and annoyingly, since for once I did remember to leave my butter out and it was fairly soft. But soft butter does not always mean cooperative butter. And I had one stick that wanted to go inside the beaters, and another stick that was trying to avoid being mixed in. So I had to stop and start a few times to reposition things. But the good news is, after a few moments, it all came together. And once it does, we really don't need to cream this super light and fluffy. Right, as soon as it looks something like this, we can stop and add the next set of ingredients, which will include 1 large egg, plus a generous spoon of our activated charcoal. And once that's been black magicked, we can toss in a splash of pure real vanilla extract, as well as a couple of tablespoons of milk, and then we'll follow that with a little bit of salt, as well as some baking soda. No, not baking powder, baking soda. And once all that's in there, we'll take our mixer, or a whisk if you want, and we will mix this until everything's evenly combined. And as you'll see, it does not take very long for this mixture to get very dark and very sinister looking, which of course is the whole idea. And as you'll see in the recipe, I'm using 4 teaspoons of the activated charcoal, which is a lot, because I wanted these Halloween-themed cookies to be very black. But you can use less, and I did a test batch with just 2 teaspoons, which came out more like a very dark gray charcoal color. And while they did not come out really black like these, they were still pretty disturbing looking. But anyway, no matter how much you use, once we have that all mixed together, we will stop, and we will transfer in our flour, and then switch to a spatula to mix it in. And you probably could use your mixer on low speed to do this, but old habits die hard. And I was always taught to mix flour into things like this by hand, so you have a little more control and feel, and you don't overmix. Although for a cookie dough, that's really not usually a big deal. But anyway, no matter what you use, once that flour just about all disappears, we will stop and blend in the last ingredient, which is a whole bunch of dark chocolate chips. And if you're keeping score at home, I'm using a 70% cacao, since I think the ultimate chocolate chip is made with bittersweet chocolate. But you go ahead and use whatever you want. And no matter what chips you choose, we want to make sure we mix those in nice and evenly. Because is there any sadder sight than a chocolate chip cookie that only has a couple chips in it, and it's sitting right next to one with a whole bunch of chips? All right, that is not a good look. So let's mix those in uniformly so every cookie has about the same number of chips. And that's it. If you have to make cookies right now, you can. But for pretty much every cookie dough, I prefer to wrap it up and chill it in the fridge for at least an hour, so it's nice and cold and firm and easy to work with when we pull it out. So that's exactly what I did. And after about an hour in the fridge, our devilishly dark dough was ready to go. So I grabbed my trusty sorbet scoop, and I started transferring nice equal portions onto a parchment-lined baking sheet. And this disher, as it's called in the business, fits just over a tablespoon of dough. So if you don't have one, you can just use a tablespoon, which works fine, it's just not as quick. But anyway, you decide. I mean, you are, after all, the dark master of doing these a little bit faster. But no matter what method you use, we don't want to crowd these cookies on the pan, which is why we're using our famous 2-1-2-1-2 alignment, which is going to give us 8 cookies per pan. And that's it, once portioned. This is now ready to go into the center of a 375-degree oven for about 12 to 13 minutes, or until they look like this. Oh yeah, those are going to turn some heads, like maybe all the way around. Yes, just like it did to that girl in that movie. Oh, and speaking of nightmares, we need to let these cool down a little bit before we try to eat them. And personally, I let them cool down all the way to room temp before I serve them, which we can do right on the pan. But I'm going to transfer them onto a cooling rack so I can reuse that pan and paper to bake some more. And by the way, this recipe is going to make about 32, give or take. So I went ahead and did a few more batches until my cooling rack was filled to capacity and I was able to take my contractually obligated pictures. And no, I'll not be making any Faustian bargain jokes, although I kind of want to. But anyway, once those cooled down, I went ahead and grabbed one and went in for the official taste. And that, my friends, believe it or not, tastes exactly like our award-winning chocolate chip cookies. Which is very odd, since you're biting into something that's black and sort of looks burnt. And yet the flavor is identical to the classic chocolate chip. So why bother with the charcoal? The obvious answer is that serving black cookies on Halloween would be a pretty cool thing to do and will probably impress the kids. And I guess the other reason would be the supposed health benefits that I'm going to let you do your own research on and decide if that's a thing. But anyway, after finishing that one, I moved on to the cold milk test. Oh yeah, for any chocolate chip to be legit, you have to be able to dip it in cold milk. And I have to say this worked out quite nicely. And no, it didn't discolor the milk. Which reminds me, in case you're wondering, it is not going to turn your teeth black. Or at least any blacker than they already are. Oh, and I hope you're not just hearing this for the first time from me, but everything, and I mean everything, comes with a cost. And if you use a charcoal to get this amazing color and possible health benefits, there's going to be a very tiny, very subtle, almost imperceivable sort of grittiness between your teeth when you finish a bite. And in fact, gritty is not even a good way to describe it, since you can barely feel it. But there is something there, and something is not nothing, so I did want to mention. Okay, you might not even have noticed it if I hadn't, but depending on what brand you use and how finely it's ground, don't be shocked if you can sort of kind of tell there's something in there. But anyway, whether you make these for the possibly dubious health benefits, or you just think they look super cool to bring to a holiday party, no matter what reasons you have in the darkest recesses of your mind, this truly is an amazing chocolate chip cookie, and I really do hope you give this a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.